Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Discover Stories on Reimagine Radio. My name's Bryden Vino, and I'm a program assistant with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. Today, I'll be joined by Sam Sullivan, honorary board member and founder of the Disability Foundation. How are you doing today, Sam?
Doing great, thanks.
Thanks for being on Discover Stories. So let's just hop right into the conversation. What was the initial idea to develop the Disability Foundation, and how did it evolve into these 6 societies? Maybe, what were some of the passions that set you on this course initially?
It started from ultralight flying. I wanted to learn how to fly an ultralight, and it turns out that the only way you can do that as a person with a disability is to get your own ultralight, and since I was on welfare, I didn't have any money for that. So we set up a nonprofit society, and it was called the Disabled Ultralighters of Vancouver Society, DOVS.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a cute acronym. And once that was going, and then we thought, well, let's do more things. And then we ended up with the sailboat that Rick Hansen had available. And so as we started adding more things onto the programs, then we realized, boy, we're going to need, something more, and then set up another society to do more things. And then VAMS came along. We wanted to do music. Anyways, it just sort of grew. And then we needed to have a foundation to sort of raise money for them. So.
Totally. And then maybe for some of the viewers that don't know what they are, what is ultralight flying?
Oh, it's like a little lawn chair with a motor on it, and it flies, so it's...
App description, yes.
Yeah, it's very... The reason we wanted that is because it was cheap, and it didn't have much regulations. If it was below a certain weight, it had almost no regulations, so we could, pretty much go along and, but we had to be very careful, of course. But,
and when would this have been? What year would you say?
80s, let's see. 85 or 6 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe kind of to bring it back there, I'm curious what your, perception of accessibility was back then, how it kind of presented itself, and, maybe what are some of the differences that you see from then to today?
Well, one of the biggest things that happened for people with disabilities is Rick Hansen.
Yeah.
He came around doing his thing. He suddenly raised the whole profile, and it became sexy in a way, and it became like something everybody wanted to do. That really changed everything. Before then, it was a lot harder.
So mentioning Rick Hansen and that boat donation having to do with DSA, maybe you could take us through your first experience sailing.
Yeah. Well, the person who I knew that did sailing actively before his injury was Brent Foote. And he, so I kind of asked him if he would be our guinea pig. And, we didn't have very good process systems. And so what we did was we just put him in the boat and sent him off. And we were watching, and we were saying, is he in control? Does it look like, what happens if he's not in control? How are we going to get him? Who's going to go get him? And, so it looked pretty sloppy out there for a while. And we thought, he's not in control. He's not able to, manage the sails and the sheets. And so, but then suddenly it all tightened up, and he was just flying along, and we thought, okay, this is good, so he was able to do it. And then, after a while, they got me in it, and I went out with one of the instructors, and it was just a magical time, to think, wow. And there was my wheelchair sitting on the dock, and there was me sailing away.
So cool. So cool. So to go even further back than the creation of the foundation, You did your Bachelor's of Business Administration at SFU in the 80s. What were some of the challenges you faced with your disability, and maybe how did that also inform the creation of the foundation?
Oh yeah, well so I had a real struggle after my injury. It was like 7 years that I was struggling around and on welfare, living in social housing, trying to sort of make sense of it all. And then I got very suicidal, and it was really quite a ugly time. And I even sort of went through a kind of a imagining, how that would be. And it was very, very a troubling time. And eventually I got to this point. I said, well, what if I was just to, not exist anymore? Or what if I was to, end my life or something? And then I thought, okay, so let's go through that process. How would that work? And then at the end of it all, it was very kind of dramatic and very real. And then at the end of it all, I said, okay, so what if I just, did that, but I had this body left over. I mean, it was some residual, whatever. Well, maybe somebody could use it. Wouldn't it be better if somebody actually, could use what I had? And probably somebody could actually make something out of it. And then I thought, well, maybe I could, like, so what if so basically what really happened in retrospect was that I killed the old Sam, and the new guy was what was left. And then I thought, okay, so here I am, I got nothing. I've got no expectations of life. I've got no big aspirations or anything. All of that's gone. All my assumptions are dead. So now what could I do with this? So I kind of thought, okay, well, it doesn't really get any worse than this, so let me make a little marker here where I am and see if I could make it into a challenge and do something with my life. And so that was the critical moment.
Wow. Yeah, it's really impressive. It's a test of your character for sure. Again, all of the people that you've been able to inspire and help along their journey that have been in, similar positions as yourself. So after creating, this idea and it really started to blossom, you got to be involved in some very interesting times. One of those times being the 2006 Winter Olympics. Kind of want to reflect on that and your involvement in it, and if the foundation had any involvement in it.
Yeah, well, I should maybe make that transition to say that when I went through that struggle with what I did was I set some goals. And so I sort of say, okay, what I want to do with my life. Well, it's probably what I was doing anyways, and I was in a band and I was doing skiing and things like that. So I thought I would go that way. And as I was moving along and trying to do these things with the disability groups, then I ran into people who said, hey, you have what it takes to be in politics. You can raise money, you can get volunteers, you can, get people to do stuff, and, you can talk, and you can have minimal social skills. Actually in politics, it's fairly low bar. But it actually is hard to find someone who has all those things. So, and because I was bumping up against municipal problems, bylaws, when we were trying to do things, we would often get, oh, you can't do that, it's against the bylaw, why is it against the bylaw? Can't that bylaw be changed? And so then it became, hey, maybe I could run. So that happened. And then when it ended up, but we needed to do this flag waving at the ceremony, then I turned to Tetra, of course, to see if we could get my flag set up on my wheelchair. And they said, no, what we want you to do is come out and you will have someone else wave the flag for you. And oh gosh, that's just not what I'm about.
Hmm.
And so then I said, I want this flag on my chair. So we put it on the chair. It was straight up in the air. And I was wheeling as fast as I could, and I couldn't get the flag to open, to flutter at all. So the only way I could do that, we figured, is by putting it on an angle.
Hmm.
And then the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, wouldn't let me put it on an angle. Said it's a very tight stage. You're going to decapitate someone if you try to spin this thing around, and you're going to be taking down the wires, and everything's going to be collapsing. There's going to be fires and sparks, and everything's going to fall apart.
So a regular closing ceremony, yeah.
Yeah, that was. So somehow, the entire stadium will go dead, and it will be a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a long time to say I'm not going unless I can have this flag do what I want it to do, and so they eventually agreed.
Brilliant. And that's just, again, one of the many various things that Tetra can do. They able to just take any situation, any issue that someone might be having, and find such creative solutions for it.
Well, that's what I love about Tetra. It's just anything you want to do, you should be able to just generate that idea. Hey, this is what I want to do. I need somebody to help me figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
I said to Tetra, I need to fly a flag and twirl the flag on the Olympic stage. And they said, oh, okay, just another.
Just another.
Yeah.
Just another project. A quick question about Tetra then. I'm curious if you have any, standout projects, standout stories from the years of its existence.
Oh man, there's so many miracles.
Countless, yeah.
Oh yeah, but for me, the very first Tetra project was I had we were going to hire engineers, and when it realized that an engineer makes almost as much in 1 hour as we made it in a month of welfare. Like we were going to put all our welfare checks together and see if we could, come up with a little bit of money. And we were like, oh my God, mm-hmm. we can't even come close to doing this with a hired engineer. And then, so I put a letter into the Engineer magazine asking if anybody would have time to help, on the free time. And a guy came by, Paul Chermak, and I showed him my freezer, that I was up high. It was an old fridge, and I would lift my arm up and try to pull the, door open, and it was on a spring, and it would spring back. And so I couldn't actually use my freezer
mm-hmm.
because I couldn't get anything in it. So then he went into my closet and found a hanger, and he just unraveled it and hooked it around the door. And then when I opened it up, I could hook the end around one of the trays on the fridge. And there it was. It was just open for me.
Just like that.
Yeah. And in a moment, he revolutionized my diet, like I do all these frozen dinners now,
Yeah.
That was such a miracle to watch that door just sit open and realize it took him literally a couple minutes to solve.
Yeah, it's these DIY solutions. Hey, I was looking through, I was helping out actually with the Tetra Nation 2021 video submissions of all these different projects. And I got to check out, 50 different projects from this year. And, a lot of them would surprise so many people as to how, simple these solutions are, how even these materials can be found right in your house. Just like you said, just a hanger. And all of a sudden, like you said, your diet is just revolutionized.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. And he did so many things for me. I could open my blinds, like I couldn't actually grab the wire and pull it. But he got a sailing device, and I was able to cleat. It was a cleat. And I could put my hand, and I could actually open the blinds. Because if they were open, I couldn't sleep, So
yeah,
right. So the only way I could do it was just keep my blinds closed. The key is that we got to get people knowing about it, and
mm-hmm.
not just knowing about it, because a lot of people know about it, but they don't connect it to their own needs.
Mm-hmm.
they think, well, that's too bizarre or too out of the way or whatever. But those are the ones we like, we like it like that.
Of course, yeah. I'd like to kind of switch gears here. I want to comment on a favorite Canadian television show that you made an appearance on, the Rick Mercer Report. Just as a fan of the show and as so many people are, I'm just curious what your experience was like there, getting to meet him and going through all that.
Yeah, well, we did two shows. I did two shows with that. And one of them we went up hiking with the trail rider,
Mm.
But he is really such a natural person, truly interested in you. He wants to know everything, and he's got such a great sense of humor. It was a lot of fun to do that with him.
Mm.
Mm. One of them was a zip line.
Oh yeah,
It's we both took the zip line together.
that's so cool. A little scary.
Yeah, he always
Just a touch.
and climbing up the mountain through rivers and things, and him getting his nice shoes all wet.
You mentioned trail riders. Kind of similar to my question about your first time sailing. What was your first time going on a hike with a trail rider like?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go. We were actually a chance to go camping overnight. Hiking up the mountain, North Shore Mountain, and then actually staying in a tent. And somehow, I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought this was possible. So I I told Paul Chermak again, and I drew out what I thought was possible. And I would sit down like this, and there would be one wheel, so he said, when do you need this? And I said, well, next week. That was ridiculous, completely, inappropriate. But that was what. So he went home, and he found in a garbage can this lounge chair, and he put a wheelbarrow wheel on it and a couple handles, and it worked. So it was a miracle. And so I ended up going up to this wild place, beautiful, rugged place with this river that was just crashing down through the rocks, and put me in a tent, and I slept. I slept outside, in a tent. And I remember waking up in the morning, and I could sort of, I could barely move, whatever, but I looked out and I could see, wow, I'm camping. And it's so beautiful and quiet and the trees. And, it was a really magical moment. And, wow, if I could do this, what else can I do?
And that was, quite some time ago. And then, fast forward today, and there's volunteers getting to take people out on different trails around Vancouver, Squamish, using these trail riders. It's really cool.
Yeah, the sailing was a big challenge because where do you sail? All these sailing places by definition are on deep, steep places, like you need water to go down quite quickly. And then we discovered Jericho Sailing Center, which is, for like Hobie cats and catamarans and things. So the turns, and it was beautifully accessible, except there was all these speed bumps and these little things that were keeping the wheelchairs out. So I had to get the speed bumps, jackhammered out, and I had to get, the paving better, and, it was, but I did think, this is kind of neat because I am sort of paving the road here, and a lot of other people can come through and not have to worry.
Quite literally and figuratively, yeah.
Like not have to figure out all of these little things and how to get over this bump and how to get through this broken pavement.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole concept of the foundation is, the different societies have these different, spaces they work in, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve the same goal, right?
Yeah, if you can get out there and set things up for people, then they can, without all that struggle, man.
Just
You know,
let
it
them
took
fly.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took years to put these things, figure them out. I had to get on the board of Jericho Sailing Center. I actually think that's where I really learned politics.
Oh yeah.
It's because, you know, in order to get, they weren't actually all, there was a couple of people that were really great about disabled people coming sailing, you know, but there were some people that were not happy about it, and they thought this is going to be a big liability. You know, they're going to be, you know, there's going to be problems. They didn't want problems, and so there was a few people that were not friendly, you know, to disabled people sailing at Jericho, and so I had to get on the board. I had to get elected, you know.
That ties into a question I have here about advocacy. And, you've been an advocate for people with disabilities for most of your life now. And you mentioned people seeing it as a liability at the sailing club, and, issues arise as new projects come. So how can you see advocacy growing in the future? How could it be better now? And what can people do to get involved?
It's funny because I never saw myself as an advocate, and I actually even didn't want to be an advocate. You know, like I didn't want someone like everything I do. It's sort of like we do it on our own, and we use our own ingenuity and resources, and we find help and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of more agency, more that we're in control, and it's sort of like I think it's an entrepreneurial attitude that if things aren't happening, it's my fault. I'm not doing something right, you know. So I think that's the healthiest way. And it's true that, if it's not working right, it's my fault because I'm not advocating enough, things. And so in that sense, yeah, then I have to become an advocate, whatever it takes to get things changed. And but always, I never want anybody to see me coming around and saying, "Oh, here's a disabled guy. I guess what else are we going to have to do here?"
Yeah, I understand. No, it's through your actions. It's the projects and your ideas and passions that it presents itself.
Well, one of the things that really, when I was struggling with my not knowing how to live in this world with a disability, I volunteered to write some articles for the Paraplegic Association. And, they're always needing help, always needing volunteers. Hey, I would like to go to people who have sort of overcome and really are doing amazing things with their lives, and they're quadriplegics. And I want to know, how did that happen? Like, what did they do? And what was their secret? So I then would phone them and say, hey, I want to do a feature on you. I'm writing this for the Paraplegic magazine, and would you be willing to, talk to me? And, they were usually flattered. Oh, somebody wants to do an article on me? Sure, So that got me to get into their heads. And what I learned so much just by their attitude. I always assumed that they had been born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or they had some big advantage. They had money, they had whatever. And I was shocked to find out that then none of them actually had any of that. None of them had this advantage that I assumed they had. And what they did have was this unhappiness with how life was going for them. And they were focused on changing it. And so it was this, when I grew up, I had always been taught, don't expect too much and you'll never be disappointed. Seemed kind of reasonable.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to, not set yourself up for a fall. But then what I learned from these people is that no, be unhappy, be disappointed, be unsettled with how things are, because that's how you will be able to then, harness that unhappiness to move you forward. And it's kind of like sailing analogy, you can, with the headwind, you can still move forward, you can by capturing wind and using that negative force to propel you forward. It's possible.
Wow. So let's come up to today, currently. You're an honorary board member for Disability Foundation, but now you kind of have some more time to pursue your own endeavors. Would you like to share some of the projects you've been working on recently?
Yeah. Right now, I have seen that we don't have a good system for preparing people for civic leadership, whether that be even nonprofit groups or civic government. And I think it would be really helpful to have something like that for people. And, the civic level is always ignored. We get people very interested in provincial politics, federal politics, and whatever. You can take courses, all that, and whatever. But then that they seem to just ignore the civic level. And yet, to me, that is where so much of the important stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my goals, is to do that. And as well, I think things are unbalanced, with the values. I think that I'd like to, through education, explain to people what I think needs to be explained. And I think there needs to be constant public education, constant efforts to keep the society going in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm up to now.
Thank you for listening to Discover Stories on Reimagined Radio. Tune in next week for more.